In this presentation, we're going to talk about laser cutting and engraving. So first, we're going to look at some examples of student work and materials they have used. In this example, the student has used metallic gold leather to cut very precise, intricate laser cuttings into the material. This was for her graduating collection. Here you can see an example of a dress that was polyester satin, which used laser cutting to cut out the intricate designs in the dress. Here you can see laser cut fringe that student has cut in multiple colors, and then they were appliqued on the jacket. Another example of a graduating collection laser cut work is here, where the student used felt to laser cut face masks, and she also used laser cutting to cut out Arabic alphabet in the designs you can see here. She used a mesh fabric and laser cut it. Here's an example of level 5 student collection development, where the student has used laser cutting for collection development. Here is a design by Giles Deacon, a British designer, which uses white leather, which has been laser cut, but at the same time it has also been engraved as well, which revealed the black outlines on the leather parts which have been engraved. You can also see how all of the edges are finished with the laser cutting as well. Here's an example of my own work. So this is some laser cut neoprene pieces and laser cut polyester felt hat. So neoprene is amazing for laser cutting because it does not fray and it works really well. A few more examples of my own work where I have used mirror transfer foils, which were laser cut first, and then they have been heat transferred onto the fabric, or heat bonded onto the final fabric. So in this case, on the right, the laser cut foil has been applied onto a pre-printed fabric, and on the left it was bonded onto a cotton fabric. So this is an example of using mirror transfer foils. And you can check out a Canadian supplier called stalls.ca for a whole variety of different colors and different finishes of laser cut foils that they supply. They also supply glitter foils. So on the left you can see a laser cut glitter transfer foil, which was first laser cut and then it was heat bonded onto the wool fabric. Another material that you can laser cut is wood. So here you can see a wooden buckle that was laser cut. Here's another example of laser cutting by Professor Dares. Here you can see wool felt that has been laser cut in these two examples. In my own work, I've done a lot of laser cut acrylic. So here you can see earrings and a necklace that was done using laser cut acrylic panels. I've also used different kinds of fabric that were laser cut, but they were first bonded onto a double-sided bonding, and then afterwards they were cut out, and then they were heat bonded onto the final garment or onto the final fabric. So here you can see metallic brocade, which was first double-sided bonded onto a double-sided fusing, and then it was cut out, and then afterwards it was heat bonded onto the final fabric. Here's an example of laser engraving. So in this case, denim. So this usually works well with dark fabrics, and especially with fabrics that have a different fiber color underneath the top layer. So here, when you remove the top dark fibers, then the lighter fibers show underneath, and this is what makes it look very 3D. So denim is a great material for laser engraving. On this sample, you can see different shades that laser engraving can achieve on a piece of denim. So there are many different contractors for laser cutting where you can email them your artwork and give them your materials, and then they can do the laser cutting for you. All you have to do is properly set up your artwork in Adobe Illustrator. So one of the suppliers in Toronto is called Hot Pop Factory, and they work with students and they don't have any minimum orders, so you can even get small pieces done. This is their website, and also they have a link which you can see here that lists all of the different materials that they have in stock ready for you to order and use, such as different kinds of wood, acrylic, plexiglass, etc. So let's have a look at some laser cutting tips that you should consider when creating an artwork. So first, you're going to set up your artwork in Adobe Illustrator. You're going to make sure that you're using RGB format. So you would have to go in Adobe Illustrator and select File, Document Color Mode, and then select RGB. So it has to be RGB. When you're done drawing your artwork using the pen tool, then you would have to set the stroke to be 0.001 pt, and you can make sure that you set it up that way, otherwise the laser cut is not going to work. The other thing you have to make sure is that you're using red stroke for all of your laser cutting lines. So to create the red stroke, you have to click on the new swatch in the swatches box and then put 255 for red, 0 for green, and 0 for blue. For engraving, you have to use black. So to create a black swatch, you can put 0 for red, 0 for green, and 0 for blue. So this is the basic setup that you need to follow in Adobe Illustrator to set up your artwork. You also have to consider the maximum bed size. So how big is the laser cutting surface? So Seneca owns a Speedy 500 laser cutting model, which has the surface of 48 inches by 27.5 inches. So that is the maximum size of the artwork that you can cut, and anything bigger than that, you wouldn't be able to cut out. You could, but then it may not be very precise because you would have to move your material over and over if it's bigger than the size of the cutting bed. So your design file size can be any height and any width, but it cannot be bigger than the maximum bed size above. You should also note that other laser cutting machines may have different maximum bed size and different dimensions. So you would have to check with individual supplier that's doing the cutting for you to see what is the maximum size that they can cut. So as I mentioned, the laser cutting for file format will be Adobe Illustrator. So that is the main tool you're going to use. But for laser cutting, you can also save artworks as a PDF, EPS, but most often we're going to save them as an Adobe Illustrator files. Vector-based formats only are accepted for laser cutting. That means Photoshop files or JPEGs would not work at all for laser cutting. For engraving, you can use multiple formats, so Adobe Illustrator, PDF, EPS, PNG, JPEG. So these are raster-based formats. So as an example I gave you with denim, you can see that this is a raster-based image that was engraved. In terms of the height, usually the maximum laser cutting height is 1/4 inch, but it can go up to 3.9 inches. So that means you could cut multiple number of dresses in some cases, but in some cases, depending on the machine, the maximum height of the material is 1/4 inch. So it really depends on the machine type. If you go to lasercut.com, there are more details on setting up your laser cutting files. So that could be a good website to check out. So when you're creating your laser cutting designs, you have to make sure that you create bridges in between the design elements so that your design and fabric will not fall apart. So on the right side, you can see the circle has bridges, and then these bridges will keep the circle in place and it's not going to fall out. Whereas on the left, you can see the circle has been cut out, but there are no bridges. So that means that this circle will fall out and it won't be a part of the design. So every time you create your own original design for laser cutting, you have to make sure that you have the bridges, and you have to make sure that they're not too thin, because if they are too thin, the material will rip and it'll fall apart. So here is an example of the laser cut earring I did. So on the left side, you can see the artwork set up for laser cutting with a red outline. And then on the right, you can see a live painted version of the earring. So it's a very good idea to always create a live painted copy just to see what your design actually looks like and to make sure that it's not going to fall apart. So you are not going to provide the live painted copy to the laser cutting supplier. It's just only for you to see and be able to visualize your design. You will only provide to them the actual artwork with the red stroke set to 0.001. So that's all they would need. If you have any text, you have to make sure that you convert all of your fonts to outlines. So to do that, you have to go to Type, Create Outlines, and then your text will be ready for laser cutting. If you have multiple design elements to repeat all over your fabric, you can use the double GSN method for print creation, which we learned previously, and it's an easy method to copy and repeat multiple design motifs. So if I create one square and I would like to have hundreds of squares repeated over and over, I could use double GSN method to quickly create a whole bunch of squares to laser cut. For laser engraving, you can use raster images, so they will be pixel based, meaning PSD, JPEGs will work, and they can be generated using software like Photoshop, but you can also use Adobe Illustrator as well in this case. And as I mentioned before, raster or pixel-based images are not suitable for laser cutting because only vector-based artwork generated in Adobe Illustrator can be used for laser cutting. So some of the materials that you can laser cut are obviously fabrics. Usually synthetics are the best because the edges will get sealed after the laser cutting and they will not fray. Whereas if you cut some of the natural fabrics, the laser cutting might start to fray, and in some cases it may even leave a brownish burnt edge around the edges, which is not a good look. Another material you can use is leather. You can also use acrylic. You can use wood panels. You can use metal, such as gold and silver. You can use transfer foils, as I already showed you several examples. They also have metallic, glitter, velvet foils, etc. that are already sticky and they're ready to be heat bonded onto your fabric after they've been cut out. You can also use regular fabric, which you would heat bond to a double-sided fusing first, and then you would laser cut it afterwards. And then you would be able to finally use the laser cut design and then heat bond it onto your final dress or the final fashion fabric. Again, you should use materials that do not fray, so synthetics are best in that case. Some contractors will have certain materials in stock in multiple colors, so for example wood, acrylic sheets, etc. You can Certainly always bring your own materials to cut, and you can ask them if you're not certain if the material would be appropriate or not. The costing is usually calculated per minute, so the length of time that it takes for the machine to cut out your design would be how they charge you. So they charge you per minute. So this is a picture of the laser cutting and engraving machine that Seneca owns. It's called Trotec Speedy 500 machine, and we will be letting you know when this machine is available for students to use. The other source of supplies would be Stahls Canada, so stahlscanada.com. They offer a very wide range of different metallic, glitter, reflective foils. They also have iron-on and heat press materials that you can apply onto your fabric after they've been cut out. These are washable and they come in many colors and finishes, and there's no minimums to buy them, so it's pretty affordable. So next we're going to go over a basic setup in Illustrator. So I just want to show you some examples first. So here you can see an artwork that I created for laser cutting. So again, we're using a stroke that's very thin. It's 0.01, so 0.001, and the stroke is red and there's no fill. So this was done for laser cut foil. In this case, I have two layers. So my first layer is what the actual supplier needs, which has the outline of my dress, and then it has all of the tiny little holes that are going to be laser cut. And again, in this case, the same thing. You've got all of the lines done in 0.001. So very thin stroke, 0.001, and the stroke is in red, which is required for laser cutting. And that's all they need. The other thing is I've created another layer, which the laser cutting supplier doesn't need, but I just created it for myself, and it's a copy of my artwork, but it's live painted with black. So if you do that, it'll be easier for you to see what your design actually looks like, and it'll be easier for you to see to make sure that you have enough bridges and that your design will not fall apart. So for this assignment, I'm asking you to also have a layer for the original artwork that's going to be used for laser cutting, and then you're going to have another layer where you have your design live painted so we can see what it would actually look like. Here you can see a multiple number of different plexiglass panels. This one here was a necklace, and they're all cut out and ready for laser cutting. In this case, I also had to consider the size of the plexiglass square panel, and then I was able to fit as many possible designs as possible in order to maximize the use of the plastic panel. So in this case, this is a multiple designs are being cut out, so I'm maximizing the use of my plexiglass panel. So for your assignment specifically, you're going to work with an Adobe Illustrator file that I uploaded to your assignments tool, and this file is called blocks, and it's an Adobe Illustrator file. So for the assignment, you can either use the dress front, which is this piece here, or if you prefer, you can use the kimono sleeve front, which is this piece here. So either one you can use. So then you're going to select one of them and start drawing your artwork on it. So in this case, I have designed a small design to go onto my kimono sleeve top, and then I'm going to select it all, press Alt-Option key, and then click and drag going down to duplicate it. I can press Shift to keep it straight. let go, and then this will duplicate my design. Then I'm going to hit Command D to duplicate this design over and over again. I could rotate this, I could copy and paste it again, I could create some other designs to add, etc. So once you are happy, you just have to select everything with the black arrow, and you have to go and change the stroke to be 0.001. Enter. And then the stroke will be very, very, very thin. Also, you remember that you're supposed to make the stroke red for laser cutting. So in order to do that, I'm going to first go and display my swatches, which I have right here. Then I will click on the new swatch button. So let me just go to Windows Swatches first. And then I will click on the new swatch button. And then in the new swatch button, I will say I would like to have 255 for my red, 0 for my green, and 0 for my blue. So RGB, red, green, blue. After you have those settings done, they'll show up in the swatch name. Then you're going to click on OK button, and that's going to add my swatch here. So if I put my mouse over my swatch, I can see that's my RGB swatch that I just created. So what I have to do next is select this entire drawing. Click on the stroke box to make the stroke box come forward. So now the computer knows that I'm going to select the stroke box. And then I will click on the new red swatch, which I just created. So I'm going to click on that. And now it's correctly set up and ready to go. So I've got 0.001, and I have used the red custom stroke color that I just created. So that's the first part of your assignment. The second part of your assignment will be to create a copy of this. So I'll just select everything with the black arrow, go to Edit, Copy. Then I will lock this layer and create a new one. And then in the new layer, I'm just going to Edit, Paste in front and paste my copy here. Then I'm going to go to Object Live Paint, Make. And then I will use my live paint bucket to fill this design with black. So this allows me to see what my design is actually going to look like, and also to make sure that I don't have any pieces that will fall out, and that my bridges are thick enough, and also it's easier for me to see whether I like my design or not. So for the assignment, you're going to have one layer with live paint. You're going to have one layer with the laser cutting artwork with a red outline, with a very thin outline. And then in the bottom layer, I'm asking you to put your student name and the material that you wish to use for your design. I already have set up your artboard size to be 48 inches by 27.5 inches, so that you don't have to change, but you should go to File, Document Color Mode, and make sure it's RGB. So I already preset it as RGB, so that should be fine, so that when you're creating the new color swatch, it'll work with the RGB input. Finally, if your laser cutting bed size is different than what we have, then what you would have to do is double click on the artboard, and then here you can put whatever size your laser cutting bed is. So it might be 20 by 10, then in that case you can change those dimensions. But like I said, in our case, I already preset the artboard size to be exactly as the laser cutting machine that Seneca owns. So that's really all you need to know about laser cutting, and good luck with your designing and your assignment.